Well, I just want to welcome everyone to our second to last session in this year's MSR Research Colloquium. I can hardly believe that we are close to the end, but I welcome you all and I thank you for being here. My name is Stacy Gunther, and I'm going to be your facilitator for this evening for this session. And I am joined by Angela Chin and Danielle Nitschka, who are our tech hosts for this session. And this is session number 23 out of 24, the title of which is Researching the Mystical, Spiritual Research and Evaluation Criteria. And if you run into any tech issues during this time, feel free to direct message Angela and or Danielle, and they will help you out. And I have the great pleasure of introducing our speakers this evening, Chris Laszlo and Tianyuan Yu. And let me talk about Chris for a moment first. He on his bio listed that he teaches at 3 different schools, which I was very intrigued by. So those schools are Case Western Reserve, Claremont, and Benedictine. So I found that enticing. He's also written 3 books and co-authored more than that. He's a managing partner of Sustainability Value Partners, a sustainability consulting group, and he's a member of our MSR Flame Keepers. And our fearless leader, Tianyuan Yu, Tian, as we like to call her, is Associate Professor of Management at Mount St. Vincent University in Canada. Her current research focus is on Zen-informed approaches to spiritual research paradigms. And one of the most intriguing things about Tian, although there are many, is that she actually holds 2 PhDs because clearly one was not enough of a challenge for her. So with that, I want to warmly welcome Chris and Tian.
Thank you, Stacy. And I believe Tianyuan is going first. So over to you, Tianyuan.
Thank you, Stacy and Chris. It's my honor to be presenting with Chris and with this entire audience. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment, please. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
It's like, is that in full screen now?
Yes.
Okay, just give me a second. Okay. All right. Okay, so before we move into words, I would invite everyone to join me in a short opening meditation. Now, sit upright and close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Listen to the sound of your breath. Sit still in the place where being superior or inferior to others does not matter. When you feel ready, gently open your eyes and be my audience. There has been a growing recognition among MSR scholars that mystical experience, spiritual transformation, or consciousness expansion are important phenomena of spirituality, and that the mainstream functionalist paradigms are inadequate for addressing these deep human experiences. A number of promising spiritual research approaches have emerged in recent years, such as research as ceremony, first-person methods, indigenous research paradigm, quantum research paradigm, global consciousness, and Zen-informed spiritual research paradigm. However, a widely accepted systematic definition of spiritual research has yet to exist. Drawing on existent spiritual research paradigms, I define spiritual research through 4 interrelated dimensions. First, an ontology informed by spiritual worldviews or post-Newtonian sciences that endorses the primacy of consciousness. Second, an epistemology that embraces multiple ways of knowing. Mystical experience and dreams, for example, are not to be dismissed, but to be recognized as potential channels of deep knowledge. Third, an axiological focus on deep, meaningful human experiences such as suffering and relief of suffering, making possible spiritual transformation for the researcher and for others impacted by the research. Spiritual transformation is vital to spiritual research. Lastly, the use of autoethnographic methods, transforming second-person and third-person methods into first-person methods by infusing the researcher's holistic self into the entire research process. I will now use the Zen-informed spiritual research paradigm as one possible example to elaborate on each dimension. Zen Buddhist ontology proposes a stratified reality or being created by consciousness. All levels of being or consciousness are born from the same Buddha nature or non-dual consciousness or global consciousness. Recognizing that the externality, like an illusion, is the manifestation of heart-mind itself. 了境如幻，自心所现. Such statements are prevalent in Mahayana Buddhist scriptures. For Zen paradigm, knowledge refers to the pathways to enlightenment, that is, spiritual transformation. Research is embodied practice, utilizing multiple ways of knowing. For example, emotions are not to be avoided, but are gateways to higher levels of consciousness. Your angst is your liberation. 烦恼即菩提. One's destructive emotions, such as anger, hate, and fear, offer the best opportunities for spiritual transformation. Research is sacred. Spiritual conviction is both the prerequisite for and the result of true knowing. Regarding axiology, research is to understand and resolve researchers' life conundrums in relation to societal problems. Research can be healing, transformative, and empowering. Healing as a research purpose is not only legitimate, but also attainable. Research is researcher-centered. Researchers' personal history and motives matter. Researchers' subjectivity are advantages to be embraced. Authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy are as important research skills as intellectuality. Regarding methodology, I developed a set of methods in the process of doing a field study at American Zen centers. Don't even try to read the table now. You may read my 2025 JMSR article on Zen paradigm published in the Journal of Management, Spirituality, and Religion if you are interested to know more about the details. But I want to note that these specific methods are just possibilities rather than fixed formulas. The Zen spirit is improvising every moment instead of being attached to rigid systematic protocols. Like quantum research, the Zen paradigm is fluid and tentative. However, I would argue one basic principle that I'm still attached to. That is, spiritual research ought to use autoethnographic or first-person methods, or at least intensely introspective, relying on the researcher's holistic engagement in the entire research process. Spiritual transformation has to be directly experienced by the researcher themselves through embodied knowing, rather than indirectly acquired or verbally transmitted through second-person methods or third-person methods. This is not to say that second-person or third-person methods cannot be utilized in spiritual research. Rather, researchers may infuse their holistic self into the entire process of empirical research, essentially transforming some or all of the second-person and third-person methods into first-person methods, such as participant observation, reflexive field notes, personal journals, interactive or narrative interviews, aesthetic archival analysis, embodied data analysis, and writing or storytelling with an authorial voice. Well, regarding the relationship between first-person, second-person, third-person methods, Chris might have some different perspective. We'll see later in his presentation. Finally, I have also developed a set of evaluation criteria for non-positivist spiritual research based on both existing literature and my own research experience. There is an urgent need for comprehensive criteria that offer an alternative to conventional functionalist rigor criteria, so that spiritual research can be more fairly reviewed, recognized, and published. Zen criteria include spiritual ontology and epistemology that recognize the primacy of consciousness and multiple ways of knowing. Authenticity instead of reliability or replicability. Verisimilitude or resonance instead of validity or generalizability. Researchers' subjectivity or agency instead of objectivity. Pragmatism and morality instead of focusing on organizational outcomes solely. And contribution to non-dual knowledge as the theoretical contribution. I also provide applicable methodological strategies for each criterion. I would welcome any thoughts on these proposed evaluation criteria for non-positivist spiritual research. So I would invite your suggestions for any alternative criteria during our open discussion. For now, I will turn it over to Chris.
I was saying thank you very much, Tianyuan. So I want to, yes, thank you. I want to build on what Tianyuan has said here. And I want to invite you with me to investigate some practical methods for researching mystical experience, taking a phenomenological approach. What excites me is that for anyone interested in management and spirituality, one of the most intriguing aspects of first-person research is that it can allow researchers to study the mystical, not as an abstract concept, but as a concrete lived experience. It's a way to study subjective inner experiences with rigor, which, as Tianyuan has said, there's skepticism about that. Can you actually study subjective experience with rigor? I want to look at one method that attempts to do that. And it can be a heuristic guide to neurological analysis, now that they make so much progress in neuroscience as we get more experiences, whether it's mystical experiences or other spiritual experiences. We find ourselves wanting to apply neuroscientific instruments, right? Neuroscientific instruments to try to assess that. But a better understanding of lived experience can help us guide. It's like becomes a heuristic guide to that neurological analysis. It's also a way to make tacit knowledge explicit. So for practitioners, it can help raise awareness of the process of the mystical experience, and it can be a guide to personal experience, leading to a greater ability to repeat those experiences. Okay, so let me admit something right up front here. I'm discovering this process actually just very recently. And tonight, what I'm inviting you to do is to come on a journey of co-discovering it with me. I'm not an expert in this at all. So Tianyuan's initial minute of meditation to put myself where I'm not above or below anybody was perfect for me, because I really am not above or below anybody here. I'm certainly not above anybody. So I would like to ask you to be patient and to explore these methods with me. Okay? Everybody good with that? So to begin with, I'm going to ask you in a moment to think about when you felt a spiritually significant, mystical, deeply connected, sacred, or beyond ordinary experiences. It might have lasted seconds or hours, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes. But I want you ready to start thinking about one experience in your life that you've had like that, okay? We'll come back to that. So, first of all, I want to say that I'm building on Tianyuan Yu's framing of defining spiritual research, principally her idea that ontology, that the nature of reality is above all consciousness. It's not material. Reality is not primarily material. It is consciousness itself. So if we accept the primacy of consciousness, then a researcher by the name of Francisco Varela argues that consciousness is not a byproduct to be explained away. He proposes a field of study called neurophenomenology, which in fact combines first-person descriptions of lived experience with third-person scientific observations using EEG, fMRI, physiology, and behavior. His point is that experience is irreducible, but it can be systematically investigated. Mystical experience is not only a neurological or physiological state, and it's not a theological claim either. It requires subjective reports based in first-person research that can be complemented by neuroscience. But we need to have a better way to get to what is this lived experience of the mystical. Mystical experiences are first-person phenomena based in often pre-consciousness. Traditional science studies them from the outside, behavior surveys, neuroscience, but the experience itself is available only from the inside. So there's a French researcher by the name of Claire Petit-Mangin who developed one of the most practical methods for actually collecting first-person research data. She calls it the explicitation interview, which helps participants re-enter a singular mystical experience, to slow it down, to reconstruct it step by step, to describe it in its unfolding in fine detail. And it actually involves second-person research as well, because there's a trained interviewer who helps participants access first-person experience. So how the method works, instead of asking, what was your mystical experience like? The interviewer asks, where were you? What happened first? What drew your attention? What did you notice in your body? What shifted next? And I realized in reading a very lengthy paper that she wrote that she's developed some extremely rigorous guidelines for interviewers for how to do this. So I'm not going to be able to do it with that level of rigor tonight, but I can give you a taste of it. So why does this matter for mystical experience? Mystical experiences are often hidden even from the experiencer. They are frequently unaware of important dimensions of a mystical experience until guided to revisit it carefully. For example, they're not aware of the body sensations or subtle emotions or shifts in awareness or feelings of unity or presence that happen in the moment of the mystical experience. Okay, so let's do a little exercise together. So to start with, think of that moment that you felt a spiritually significant, mystical, transcendent, deeply connected, sacred, or beyond ordinary experience. However long it lasted, just think of it, okay? Now, I want you to go back to that experience. For 30 seconds, go back to it. Can you identify a particular moment within that experience? When and where were you? Take a moment to place yourself back there. Now, looking through your own eyes in that moment, what do you notice first? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What is happening in your body? Take your time as you try to go and recreate the unfolding of this singular experience. Don't forget, you're not interpreting that you're trying to recreate it in some ways. So explore the felt experience. What was happening in your awareness just then? How did your body feel? Was there a feeling of expansion, stillness, energy, connection, awe, love, or something else? Did your sense of time feel different? Did your sense of self feel different? If there was a shift, how did it begin? So now I'm going a little quicker than I should probably, but just to move already into a bit of a debrief. What surprised you as you revisited your experience? Did you notice details that you had not remembered before? What was it like to focus on how the experience unfolded rather than what it meant? And the evaluation criteria for this research, as Tianyuan already mentioned, is really a focus on experiential specificity. The goal is not to have some general statements or some conclusions about what it was after the fact. What you really want is to capture phenomenological detail about the sensations, emotions, attention, imagery, and temporal unfolding. Reduction of interpretation that distinguishes what was experienced from what was later concluded about it. You want methodological transparency that clearly describes how first-person data were elicited. And you want intersubjective validation. You know, a lot of this was used in actually early epileptic research. What they found is that they were using just neuroscience tools to try to analyze what was happening in the brain when an epileptic patient was about to have an epileptic seizure, right? But it turns out that if you can train that person to go back to just a minute or two before their epileptic seizure, they notice signs of the upcoming seizure, and they can do something about it. But this comes only from a study of a subjective experience just before the seizure itself. So in summary, Varela shows why rigorous first-person methods are necessary for consciousness research. Petit-Mangin shows how to obtain rigorous descriptions of experience, and together they provide one of the strongest methodological foundations for researching mystical and spiritual experiences scientifically. In the upper left, you see Varela's foundational work on neurophenomenology, which has been cited 3,367 times, and Petit-Mangin, her paper on describing one's subjective experience in the second person, an interview method for the science of consciousness, which has been cited 1,337 times. So that's it for me. I think in the interest of time, I'll just stop here, and then Tianyuan, you and I can just have a little back and forth. Is that what we were going to do?
Yes. Thank you, Chris. That's wonderful. So after watching your presentation, I think I need to say that what I just presented sounds very certain, right? Very assertive. That's not the spirit of dwelling in the threshold of knowing. We need to, uh, of course, we need to be courageous and brave enough to explore into the unknown. But also, so we need to have some faith in ourselves, in our own personal experience. That's why I shared those principles or guidelines, not principles, guidelines, in a very assertive tone because they are solidly based on my own personal research experience. However, after watching your presentation, I realized that I need to make some amendment to my previous guidelines assertions. I realized the importance of second person methods that can be really useful and complementary to the first person method.
Yes.
So yeah, and I also recall a long-lasting debate between me and Gaitong Moment regarding whether spiritual transformation or mystical experience can be replicated. Is that replicable? I insisted that it's not. It's not replicable. It's a miracle. Miracle cannot be replicable. But more, Gaitong insisted it can. And I think he basically used a second person method, giving me a interview, helping me to reflect on what happened to me during the mystical experience, just like the explication interview methods you introduced. I also
Yes.
recall a presentation by a speaker. I think his name. He's leading the second session of the colloquium. His name is Daniel Brathman. He talks about the shadow work of mystical research, where he refers to the importance of second person method, not the first, not the third, but the second. So I now surrender to that view. I agree.
Mhm.
So it's not a question, it's just my comments. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think that you have a lot of experience in first person research from a Zen Buddhist perspective. And Zen Buddhism has been doing this now for 2,500 years, right?
Yes,
So,
no kidding. No
yeah,
kidding.
so there's a lot of experience there. But I think we could make this a more accessible approach to people who are not necessarily Zen Buddhists so that they could try to understand, help others understand what a mystical experience is or spiritual experience and raise their awareness of what's going on at that time. And that might give them more insight into the experience, how it unfolded, and it might give them more guidance to replicating it, even if it's a miracle.
Yeah. And I guess later when we open the discussion, open the floor, we can invite participants to share their reflection
Yes,
when you were going over the three-step explication interview, you know.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
The reason for my reflection was because I realized that there were some elements I have long forgotten about my own mystical experience. It was not until just now when when I was following your guidance, I realized there was something such as confusion, a feeling of
yeah,
confusion that
yeah.
I have
Well,
forgotten
that's
for a long time.
perfect. That's
Yeah,
perfect. That's exactly what this method is meant to do, to
yes,
recall what was going for you at that moment that you might have forgotten because you
yes,
were more focused on the outcomes.
yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to take questions from the audience if you are.
Me too.
Thank you for everyone's contributions. And thank you, Tianyuan, for your presentation.
Thank you so much. And to wrap up, I would like to lead a short closing meditation. So please allow me to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So to close up this very intellectual conversation, I want to acknowledge that all knowledge created through intellectuality or language is imperfect. Research is ultimately a dream from a Zen Buddhist perspective. So don't be too attached to the dreams. Thus, we can find our profound equanimity that relieves all sufferings. All conditioned dharmas are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, like dewdrops and lightning flashes. Thus, we shall perceive them. 一切有为法，如梦幻泡影，如露亦如电，应作如是观。Let's keep calm and practice. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Tian and Chris. That was a really intriguing presentation, really intriguing conversation. So thanks everyone who was involved in that. I want to just thank everyone who was here tonight in our second to last session as part of the MSR Research Colloquium. We do have one more, and we hope you will join us for that session. It's going to begin at 8:30, so just a little over 15 minutes away. And what we'll be doing in that session is integrating all the things that we have talked about and explored and learned together. So please bring your thoughts, please bring your experiences that you have had over the last 35 hours and share those with other people. Pardon me. We are going to put you into a waiting room just so we can prepare for the final session. And once again, thank you so much for being here. And thanks again to Tian and Chris for a really wonderful presentation.